In this video, we will talk about implementing Java classes, and we will start by asking this question: what are the things that can be in a Java class? Now, we can have instance variables or attributes. We can have constructors, which are the way to initialize an object. We can have methods, including what we call setters and getters. Now we will talk about each one of those in details, starting with instance variables. So instance variables will hold objects data. We will declare them in the class declaration. So we will have whatever variables we want in the class declaration when we write our class, but we will initialize them during the object instantiation. We will do this using the class's constructor that we will create. So what is a constructor? Again, we will talk about that in a moment. And the final thing I want to mention about instance variables is that these are often private or protected. We will see what is the difference when we try to make them public or private, and we will see what difference it makes in terms of class usability and security. Now let's go ahead and create a class with some instance variables. So let me go here, and what I have is I just have two empty classes, a student class and a student driver class. This has a main method because this is where I intend to create my objects. And right here in the student class, I don't have anything. So I will start by creating my instance variables. So this is going to be instance variables. And for a student, I may have something like first name. So first name, let me make this in uppercase. And I will have a last name. And what else may I have? So maybe student ID. So for the student ID, I intend to have some letters preceding the number, so I will not create it as an integer. I will create it as a string, but you can have any type of data in your instance variables. So I will have another string for student ID, and let's have one more string for major. So these are the instance variables that I have for my class. Now whenever I come here and create an object in my student driver class, this object will have those instance variables. Now how do I create an object? We create the object using the class constructor. So let's go back and see what is a constructor. So a constructor is a special method that is used to initialize class objects. Now it will have the same name as the class name, including the case, so it is case sensitive. So in the case of class student with an uppercase S, it has to be called student with an uppercase S. We'll have three types of constructors: the default constructor, the no argument constructor, and the parameterized constructor. So the default constructor is going to be placed there if the programmer does not implement a constructor for that class. The Java compiler will insert a default constructor to make instantiation possible. This will have empty body. This will not appear in the source code. And again, this will allow object instantiation and will not initialize any of the instance variables that you declare in the class. Now, once we declare a constructor, the default constructor cannot be used anymore. Since we did not declare any constructor, let's try to use the default constructor. From what we know, it is going to be called by creating a new object. So I will say student, and let me call it S1 is equal to a new student. And I don't have anything to place as argument for that, so this is calling the default constructor of the student class. Now, since I created this, then I should be able to access whatever things that are in the student class, which are those variables right here. So if I come back and try to print something like the first name, I can just say, okay, so print the first name of S1. So S1 dot, I have access to first name, last name, major, and student ID. So let me print the first name, and let me save this, try to run it. It gives me null. Why is that? Because remember, the default constructor will just allow you to create an object. It will not initialize any of those variables. How can we initialize them? Now let's go back and see. We have what we call the no argument constructor. We'll use the same class name, will not have any arguments in the argument list. This can initialize instance variables, and all objects created using this constructor will have the same values for those attributes. Now this is not the same as the default constructor. This will be available in the source code. This will be created by the programmer, not by the Java compiler. So let's go ahead and create one. Now let me go to student class, and I will say, okay, so this is my no argument constructor. So my no argument constructor is going to have the same name as the class name, so it's going to be public student. And keep in mind, it has to be the same case. We will not have any arguments in the argument list. And in here, I can initialize any one of the instance variables. I can initialize 1, 2, 3, all of them, none of them. I can do anything I want. So I will say, okay, when I create an object using the no argument constructor, I want the first name to be Bob. And at the same time, I want the last name to be something like Evans, maybe. And I will give a default ID, so student ID is going to be, in this case, ST000001. So let me save this, and notice that I will run the exact same code that we ran in the driver. I will not change any single thing. Previously this gave us no. Now let's run it. It gives me Bob. Now I have values. I can go ahead and try to print something else. So okay, S1 dot student ID. And let me just say S1 dot major. S1 dot major. So let me try to print all of those. Now you will see that I have Bob and I have the student ID, but then I have null. The null here comes from major. Why is this? Because if you recall, I did not give it any major. So if I come here and say, okay, in this case, major is equal to general studies. And let me save this. Now if I go back and run the same code back again, it gives me general studies because I just assigned it in that constructor. Now what's gonna happen if I create another student? So let me come here and say, okay, this is S2 now, and I want to print the information of S2. So let me print it, and what I have is the same information. Because remember, we said the no argument constructor is going to help you create an object, initialize the instance variables, which are the attributes. But the thing is, it will use the same values for every single object you create using that constructor. How can we resolve this? We will see how to resolve this in the next video by using the parameterized constructor, which is going to have a set of arguments.